here's my review of Fallout Season 2, Episode 5 and 6. And just like the rest of the season, these are both pretty good episodes. I think that, and I think that overall, like this season is just not as strong as Season 1. But I still think that it's a solid episode of a solid like season so far. And I mean, we only got 2 more episodes left. But like, I do think that this is, like I said, we're already more than halfway, like already 6 out of 8 episodes. And I can firmly say at this point, yeah, this is not as good as Season 1, but it's still pretty good. Don't get me wrong, this is not like a Last of Us Season 2 situation. It's still a good season. And as for Episode 5, there's a lot of stuff that happens, whether it's where the main thing is Cooper meeting with Robert House and them discussing cold fusion and then basically discussing the end of the world. And that's what the show I think does so well is the almost sickening nature of how they talk about the end of the world and the apocalypse through the eyes of a businessman. It's very just unsettling and almost hilarious of how dark it is, but yet played and somewhat upbeat. It's very well done. And we find out how House wants to use cold fusion as a way to survive the apocalypse as a robot, which we later see. Or I think we had already seen because we saw his robot. And that was just a really fun discussion. And I think that there's some really great tension between Cooper and Barbara of him basically being like accusing her of what she's doing as for the company she works with. Like, we know that in a way I mean, of course we see in Season 1 how it was her idea to drop the bombs in the first place. And you see how back then he was still very suspicious of what she's doing. And it was all great. And of course, like the small, and then like our other small like side plots of Maximus and like Thaddeus, I believe, I don't even remember his name. They're good as well. But it's just not nearly as compelling as the other 2 main stories. And I think that it kind of, Episode 5 ends on like a pretty like big cliffhanger in terms of like how we see how the ghoul drugs Lucy just to see his family. And it's a pretty shocking betrayal because even though like we know the ghoul isn't really the best person, you could see it. Like I said, I say this all the time when talking about him, how he used to be such a great guy, and just seeing him at many points help Lucy, but just seeing how he over the time though he's always betraying her and she has her hopeless optimism. It's very impactful. I think it was done great. But you could see though how Lucy is finally starting to stand up for herself as she basically shoots him off a wall and he gets impaled, but of course he survives because he's the ghoul. He's basically immortal. And that part was great. It was really cool. But the big thing with Episode 6 and like Episode 5 is seeing Hank again and just the interaction between Hank and Lucy after seeing each other, after having not seen each other for so long, and especially knowing what we know now about Hank. It creates a very interesting dynamic. Like, in many ways, like, Hank is trying to convince, like, Lucy what he's doing is not wrong. And because Lucy is such a great character and such a good person, of course, she doesn't fall for it. She sees, like, you're basically torturing people. You're enslaving people. And she has this, such a aw shucks kind of value to her. I'm going to bring you to justice. That it just works so well. Like, Lucy is just such a great character, and that's why I love this show, is her. And we see many times like where Lucy almost by force is just trying to take her father to justice. Like however that means, whether she says how that she's gonna go all the way back to her vault of Vault 33, I believe it was, or some other way. She has this hopeless optimism that is just great, and that's just what makes this show so good. I'm definitely curious on where we're going from here because at the end of Episode 6, Maximus and Thaddeus find the ghoul after he was impaled, and we're going to see the ghoul teaming up with them. That's like a very interesting switch up because for so long we've seen Lucy and the ghoul work together, and seeing Maximus and Thaddeus work with the ghoul could be a very interesting dynamic because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't think we've ever seen them interact. And I still think that like some of the best parts of episode 6 is Lucy just trying to help all these people who are completely like basically zombies in terms of with all these chip implants of basically just zombified slaves, because Lucy's just that great of a person and that great of a character. She's just fantastic. That was just another touch, and it kind of just also touches on this like post like I think it is the actual concept of like what's going on here. It makes it even creepier when you think of what is the setting of Fall, like this 1950s retrofuturistic post Cold War optimism mixed with some dark secrets, and of course, like with the Cold War in 1950s, it just kind of has like this right after World War II. Of course, there were some experiments going on. It just has this unsettling vibe to it, and I thought it was just done very well. But it's really all just like the twisted reveals that we see in episode 6 that make it so impactful, like how Barbara is forced by the Enclave to drop these nukes, or after the ghoul gets rescued by like a super mutant, of him also trying to join this Enclave, join this kind of cult. And it just leaves you with so many like things that are just so fascinating and that I'm looking forward to seeing. But I am worried that, I mean, we only got 2 more episodes left. We still got to deal more with Lucy's dad. What's going on with Maximus and Mr. House and the whole thing with the cold fusion and freezing himself. But overall, I did enjoy these. I did enjoy episode 5 and 6. I thought they were both pretty good. But I just think overall, like I said, just at the beginning, it's like this season is just, it's just not as good as the first season. But that being said, it's still just a blast to watch, whether it's the over the top, really crazy, violent action, or just how fun our characters are. Like, I love Lucy. No pun intended. I love the ghoul. I'm not super high on Maximus, but I think he's a fun character. But that's what makes the show good, is just the fun characters. And I will say that, like, there's still a lot of interesting stuff going on here that just keeps me compelled. And I didn't really talk about the stuff that actually is going on within the bunker of all the like all the water like troubles that's going on down there. That's like another whole other subplot I just don't have time for, or there's really just not as much to say. But overall, the way that episode 6 ended, it just is another one of those things where it just makes me, I mean, hey, I'm even more excited for the next episode. And episode 5, we still had a lot of interesting stuff going on there. And I think especially with us learning that Cooper's family is still alive and in cryostasis, I just want to see that. That's going to be so fascinating. But yeah, overall, these were some pretty good episodes. Like I said, I don't think that this season is as good as season 1, but it's still pretty good.